Stop killing games just became a real political problem for the games industry. California's Assembly passed AB 1921, the Protect Our Games Act, and the industry should be paying attention. Now let me say this, the bill is not a law yet. It passed the Assembly, and now the fight moves to the California Senate. So no, this is not the finish line, but it is a real step. Because this takes one of gaming's ugliest business habits and puts it in front of lawmakers. Selling people paid games that can be killed later. This is what we're auditing today, not the entire games industry, not every online game or developer. The target is specific. Paid games that are sold like products, controlled like services, and shut down with no real remedy for the player. So, let's run it through the player respect test. Does this business model respect your money, time, ownership, intelligence, trust, and attention? The promise was simple. You buy the game, and you get the game. This is the basic deal most players think they are accepting. You see a trailer, you see a product page, you see a price tag, you see a button that says purchase. Then the game goes into your digital library like every other thing that you bought. So from the player's point of view, this is not complicated. You paid money, you got access, you built progress, you spent hours in that world. You may have bought expansions, cosmetics, battle passes, or deluxe editions. And for some people, these games are not just files on a hard drive. They are tied to friendships, memories, communities. They are tied to hundreds or thousands of hours. This is the promise the industry benefits from. The industry benefits when players treat games like long-term investments. It benefits when players build habits around these games. It benefits when players tell their friends to join. It benefits when players keep showing up. So the problem is not just, here's a game. The promise is this is something you can invest in. This is where the problem starts. Because if you want players to invest money, time, trust, and attention into a paid game, then you need to respect what happens when that game reaches the end of its life. That should be basic. That should not require a movement. That should not require a bill. But, here we are. The reality is much uglier. You do not always get the game. A lot of times you get access to the game while the company still wants to maintain the systems that make it work. And when those systems get shut down, your purchase can become useless. This is the part players are tired of. You bought it, played it, supported it, and one day the company shuts down the required servers, and the thing you paid for no longer works in any meaningful way. And when players complain, the response often turns into legal language. You did not actually own it. You licensed it. You agreed to terms. You had access while the service was active. That may make sense to a lawyer, but it does not sound good to a normal person. Because normal people do not walk into a digital store and think, I'm entering a temporary licensing relationship that can lose core function at a later date. No, it's not how it works. They think they bought a game because that's how it was presented. That is why AB 1921 matters. The bill challenges this exact setup. If a company wants to shut down services required for the game's ordinary use, it would need to give players 60 days notice. Then the company would need to provide one of three things: an independent playable version, a patch or update that keeps the game usable, or a full refund. This is the reality check. This is not saying every online game must live forever. That is the industry-friendly spin. The cleaner argument is this: if a company sells you a paid game, it should not be allowed to destroy the basic use of that game later with no warning, no patch, and no remedy. That's not extreme. That's not anti-developer. That is just basic accountability. Now we need to talk about the system. It is easy to just say the company got greedy. Sometimes that's true, but it's not deep enough. The real issue is the system underneath the decision. Modern gaming has moved towards control. More online requirements, more accounts, launches, DRM, licensing language. And the system rewards that. If a publisher can sell you a game, control access to it, and monetize it over time, shut it down later, and avoid giving you a meaningful remedy, that is a powerful business position. It reduces responsibility, increases control, and keeps the player dependent. That's the structure. And once that structure becomes normal, the player slowly loses power. The store page says buy. The legal agreement says license. the marketing says experience. The shutdown notice says service ended, and somehow the player is expected to just accept all of that. That is the gap Stop Killing Games is attacking. It is exposing the difference between how games are sold and how games are controlled. The ESA's opposition makes this even clearer. The ESA argued that the bill is based on the false premise that consumers own digital games because games are licensed rather than sold as unrestricted property. That may be the industry's legal position, but a public argument, it sounds terrible because players hear something very simple. We want your money, but we do not want the responsibility that comes with selling you something. That is the pressure point. The industry wants product level revenue with service level control. Players are starting to question that deal, and once players start questioning the deal, the old language stops working. Read the terms is not just a trust strategy. You never owned it is not a customer relationship. Servers are expensive is not an excuse for having no end-of-life plan. Companies already know online games can die. They know server costs exist. They know communities move on. They know licenses expire. They know back-end systems break. So if they know all that before release, then they should plan for it before taking people's money. That is a systems level issue. Not every game can be saved forever. Not every online feature can be preserved perfectly, but a paid game should not launch with no reasonable plan for what happens when the company is done supporting it. That's kind of basic. Now let's break down what this costs the player, because this is where the player respect test matters. A normal rant says, something like, this sucks, but an audit says, here's what this actually takes from you. Here's the money cost. The money cost is obvious. You pay full price for the game, then you pay for expansions, cosmetics, season passes, deluxes, battle passes, then subscription-style extras. And after all that, the company can still shut down the services required for the game's ordinary use. That's the problem. The player paid real money for this. The company got real revenue. But when the product stops working, the player may get nothing. No refund, no offline patch, independent version, or anything. Now here's the time cost. The time cost might be even worse. Games are not passive products. You build things in them. You level characters, you learn systems, finish campaigns, unlock items, and develop a skill. You can even join communities. So when a game gets killed, players do not just lose access. They lose the time they invested into something the company encouraged them to treat as meaningful. And yes, all entertainment takes time, but that's not the issue. The issue is when the company asks for a long-term commitment while refusing long-term responsibility. That fails the time test. Now here's the ownership cost. This is the core of the whole issue. Digital ownership keeps getting weaker. Players still see a buy button. They still see a purchase receipt. They still see a library. But the actual control belongs to the company. And when the company decides the game is done, the players finds out how little they actually controlled. That is why the word ownership matters. Because if players do not own the games they buy, the industry needs to stop hiding the reality behind product-style marketing. Be honest. Say it plainly. Say you are paying for access that may end. But companies know that sounds bad. So they benefit from the more comfortable language, which is buy, own, library, purchase. That just fails the ownership test entirely. Now here's when I get into what I like to call the trust cost. And this is the biggest long-term cost. Every shutdown makes players more suspicious. Every delisting makes players more cautious. Every DRM issue makes players more annoyed. Every dead live service game teaches players the same lesson. Do not trust the promise. And once trust starts breaking, it does not only hurt the bad actors, it hurts everyone. Good developers, honest studios. It hurts smaller teams trying to sell bad games in a market where players have been trained to expect disappointment. Well, paid games, not bad games. This is what companies ignore. Bad games, bad business habits do not stay isolated. They poison the market. Now that fails the trust test. Now here's the intelligence cost. This one does not get talked about enough. A lot of industry defenses sound like they are trying to make players feel stupid for believing the obvious thing. Players see a purchase button and think they bought something. That is not a dumb assumption. That is a normal assumption. If the industry wants to argue that the player only licensed temporary access, then the industry needs to make that clear before the sale, not buried in terms, not hidden behind legal structure, not explained after shutdown. Before the sale. Respecting the player's intelligence means presenting the deal honestly. Right now, the industry often does not do that. That fails the intelligence test. Now here's the attention cost. Live service and online dependent games do not just ask for money. They ask for attention. Daily logins, seasonal events, limited time rewards, progression systems, update cycles, community check-ins. Players are constantly pushed to keep up. So when a game trains players to keep showing up, then disappears, that creates attention waste too. Players gave the game space in their life. The company should respect that. And respect starts with a real end-of-life plan. That fails the attention test. So here's the verdict. The current model fails the player respect test. Not every online game, not every developer, and not every shutdown. But the business model of selling paid games that can be remotely killed later with no meaningful remedy, that just fails. Player respect score, just absolute fail. Here's the breakdown. Money fails. Time investment fails. Ownership fails. The intelligence test fails. Trust fails. And attention fails. Some games cannot be turned into a clean offline version of themselves. Some multiplayer experiences depend on active communities. Some service systems are expensive. Some shutdowns are avoidable. I can acknowledge all of that. But those obstacles do not erase the responsibility at all. They only prove why companies need better planning before launch. If your game depends on online services for ordinary use, then you need a shutdown plan before you sell it. Not after backlash, not after players get angry, not after servers are already scheduled to go dark, before. That should be the standard. Now let's be fair to the bill. AB 1921 does not appear to demand eternal support. That matters, because the easiest way to attack this kind of a bill is to pretend it forces companies to keep every server online forever. That is not the strongest reading of the issue. The stronger point is that companies would need to provide notice or in some kind of remedy. A playable version, a patch, or just a full refund. That gives companies options. It also puts responsibility where it belongs, on the company that sold the paid product in the first place. This is why the bill matters, even if it changes later. It forces the industry to answer a basic question. What does a player actually deserve when a paid digital game loses ordinary use because the company shuts down required services? That question has been long overdue. Now here's where this could get complicated. Now there are some real complications, and we should not pretend they don't exist. No, we should not pretend they do not exist. Some games are built around online interaction from the ground up. Some features cannot be preserved without changing the game. Some studios may not have the budget to maintain extra versions forever. Some refund systems could become messy. Some companies may respond by changing store language or pushing harder into subscriptions. That's all possible. But here's my answer. Complicated does not mean untouchable. The industry does not get to create a complicated system, profit from it, and then use that complexity as a shield against basic consumer protection. That's just too convenient. If companies can build monetization systems, account systems, live service systems, battle pass systems, and engagement systems, then they can build end-of-life planning into paid games. Not perfectly, not always easily, but seriously. That is the standard players should demand. This is why Stop Killing Games is gaining traction. It is not just about preservation. It is about player respect. Players are tired of being told the deal is one thing before purchase and another thing after shutdown. They are tired of buying games that depend on systems they cannot control. They are tired of legal language being used to explain away obvious frustration. And they are tired of companies acting shocked when people get angry after losing access to something that they paid for. The industry needs to learn this fast. Players are not mad because servers eventually shut down. Most people understand it. I understand it. Players are mad because companies sell games like products, control them like services, then hide behind the licensing language when the product stops working. That's the real issue. This is the audit, and right now the industry does not pass. The bottom line is this. Stop killing games matters because it puts the ownership problem directly in front of the industry. If players do not own the games they buy, then companies need to stop marketing those games like normal products. And if companies want to keep selling paid games that depend on online services, then they need to offer a responsible end-of-life plan. A notice, a patch, a playable version, a refund, something. Because you never really owned it, it's just not good enough anymore. The Protect Our Games Act is not law yet. It may change, fail, may even get watered down, but the pressure is real and the message is simple. If a company takes your money for a paid game, it should not be able to destroy the basic use of that game later and leave you with nothing. That fails the player respect test, and the industry knows it.
Oh, hey, glad you're still here. I've, just finished syncing the next set of files for you. They're right over there on the screen. Take a look and, catch ya in the next one.